Thank you. Thank you. Very good afternoon to all of you. We are about to dive into a very dynamic discussion which has the potential of reshaping the world, right? It actually is reshaping the world, right? And then we're going to talk about how we can skill the rural workforce, the rural population with the technological advancements, right? And for the technological advancements that we are currently seeing here. And we have a wonderful and expert panel here to dive deeper into this and to dissect the challenges and opportunities that we have and that they have encountered, which can add great value to this discussion. So thank you all for joining us. And I think we should get started. But before we get there, I would request you all to spend maybe a minute and a half each to talk about the work that you do so that we have more context to the discussion that we're going to have here, right? So Aditya, Arjun would like to start first.
Sure, thanks Rohit. Thank you everyone for having us. I work for the Aga Khan Development Network. A lot of you might be aware of the work AKDN does globally and in India. I work at the Aga Khan Academy in Hyderabad, but also sort of run strategy for our academies globally. We're in we run 200 schools in several countries around the world. And my particular interest in joining AKDN's workforce in India was primarily to run a program which focuses on recruitment of students from rural settings. But prior to joining AKDN, I've been in education for about 12 years. Was part of the team that set up Jindal University, and before that I was an investment banker, so I spent about 6 years living in London with Merrill Lynch. So that was a past life, so we won't go into the investment banking side, but there's a lot of learnings that I'd love to share today with everyone.
Thank you. Shabri, would you like to go next?
Hi, good morning. I am Shabrinath Nair. So growing up in a developing country, we have always been used to looking at a technology that's built in the developed world and then try and port it or adapt it to the Indian context or a developing world context. So when I became an engineer, I wanted to change a little bit of that and try and see how do we approach the developing world problems by technology that is built frugally here in India. So the moment you hear about a welder, what does come to your mind? Most often it will be about somebody working in the street corner, working on a grill in a very unsafe environment. The picture that you see on the left, that's what you typically see. So can we use technology to make someone employed in a proper formal sector which has safe work environment and the quality of output is appreciated better? That was our objective. And we found that the cost of doing hard skills training was very prohibitively high. And this is something that we can change with intervention of technology. And the moment we start talking about using technology in vocational training, the feeling is that technology is costly and it is only going to increase cost and not decrease cost. This is true only if you try and bring in tech that is built in the Western world. If we do it here, it may not cost so much. The other challenge when we use technology is that technology overpromises in most cases. We have seen this happen with EdTech. And so just having technology is not sufficient. It should deliver measurable value at the shop floor or at the employment level. So when we made tech to be able to work here in India, we were conscious of challenges with internet connectivity. We were conscious of problems with power access. The reason why I brought the bag to the stage is that the simulator is only this much. It's easy to carry it around. You don't have to go to a large training center. You can take it to anywhere where the students have access to. And it also creates its own network, and you can train, and then the data gets stored locally. Whenever you take the laptop to a place which has internet, it syncs to a central server. And you can see that many times I get asked the question, oh, this is too high-tech for rural. And it is not so, because as you can see in the pictures, in tier 3, tier 4 towns in Tamil Nadu, Nippon Paint has used this to upskill the painters who buy their paint. And you can see that even rural as well as women have taken to this very easily. So yesterday in the immersion, when we went to the school, the kids in Madanapalli spoke very beautiful English very confidently. So there is nothing that segregates an urban person from a rural person. You give it to them, they will do it really well. So it's only a question of taking it to them. And what we built frugally here in India is now used very well in the US. So on the left, you see picture of a school kid in California using my simulator. We have our simulators being used in Alaska. I never thought something we built in Chennai would get used in Alaska, of all places. And last, wanted to say that anything that we build for developing world need not be cheap or need not be compromising on quality. So these are some of the installations that we have in various parts of the country. It is, I can tell you, it is at par with the best in the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, good afternoon. I head Deshpande Skilling. Just to introduce myself, I come with about 30 years in the corporate world and then moved to the development sector. So the role that I am in currently, we engage with colleges, especially in tier 3 and rural places. We have enrolled about 4,500 kids every year. And we spend about 400 hours skilling them very specifically to what is required by employer companies. We have specific sectors that we work with. And the good part is if it's done scientifically, if it is done involving the stakeholders, if it is done with the demand in mind, we are able to do about 95% placement. So of all these kids who come and join, most of them from rural backgrounds, we're able to place a good 95% of them into good jobs, so into organized sector jobs. But we are actually going for a low-hanging fruit. We are working with kids who have, I won't call them kids, they are adults, many of them sitting here today. They have completed formal education. They have done 10 plus 2 plus 3, hail from rural backgrounds, because of which the access to jobs and awareness of what are the job opportunities is not too great among this community. So Deshpande Skilling, we are actually trying to bridge that gap and help them go and grab that opportunity. So yeah, very glad to be part of this panel. And yeah, we have been, another difference is that we have been largely using brick and mortar methods to do all of this. And it's great to be sitting with somebody who's talking of technology to be doing all of this. I think there's scope for us to do more by using technology, and glad to be part of this panel.
So hello everyone, this is Damini. I'm the co-founder of VMake Scholars. So I started this venture in 2015. It was after I got a 100% scholarship for my master's in the UK. So I came back to India and started a platform which we call it Scholarship Search Engine. So we started curating information from various trusts, foundations, government bodies, everything at one single place for students to find it easily. Though we started with scholarships, as of now we help students with all kinds of financing. So extending from scholarships even to education loans, which in India unfortunately is not very easy to get, as I think the person from Rangde also spoke. So so especially education loans, which is something banks never wanted to do unless you have your uncle in bank or your chacha in bank. So we are trying to bring that to a common ground for everyone. We get a lot of applications even from rural part of the country where a lot of aspirational India is. Even helping them get that credit, of course, in partly from scholarship, or if they're not able to get 100% scholarship, helping them get financed through other forms of loans is what we do at VMake Scholars, which is, as of now, India's largest education finance platform.
Fantastic. I think what more can you ask for when you have a topic like rural skilling with technological advancements to discuss? So thank you for joining us. A little bit about myself. I work for Talent Sprint, which is in the business of bringing transformational learning programs for professionals like our young population sitting in the back rows there, and working professionals on deep technology. So I'll bring in some more context as we go about discussing this. So let's get started. I mean, remember that episode from Black Mirror where you found robots stealing jobs of all human beings, right? Of everyone. right? Don't worry, we're not there yet, but certainly things are changing, right? The way workforce has to, the future workforce is changing, and the rural communities have to be ready for that. And imagine a situation where the rural communities and the rural population not just survives but thrives in this phase of technological revolution, right? It certainly can happen, provided we bridge the skill gap, right? And we bring them the opportunities that they are otherwise deprived of. So I would like to start off with Arjun, who's been working at the grassroots levels, helping the disadvantaged rural communities, right? And with the kind of work that you're doing at school education, right? How do you do this? What kind of tailored programs do you bring about for the rural population?
Thanks, Rohit. I think first and foremost, I think the interest in rural India for me personally started when I moved back in 2013 and spent a year and a half living in villages with ITC's eChaupal. I mean, I was hearing earlier about how do you sort of eliminate the middleman, and you were talking about handicrafts and the prices that a sort of textile designer would get from a rural environment would be 1/10 of what the price in the urban setting would be. Similarly, ITC's eChaupal, when it created a model, it wanted to eliminate the middleman. So on weekends, I used to spend time teaching children in government schools across the states I lived in. You have to understand, I grew up in Calcutta, so then to suddenly live in villages, to try and convince farmers to send children to school, the midday meal was then sort of just about kicking off. So it was a very interesting period for me to understand that what lacks in sort of the rural space is opportunity. Whether it comes down to the teaching, if it comes down to, you look at absenteeism in educators, that's another challenge. So one of the things that we do as part of the Aga Khan Academies, of which now we've got 4 across the world, there's a large impetus that's sort of given to understand that a country that you live in, the fabric of that country needs to be represented in your classroom. We are going further and further and further away from that by creating a sense of elitism, privilege. Even going to a good school or a good university now is a privilege, right? So then how do you create opportunity? How do you tell someone that you and somebody else of your age who might have studied the same subjects has the same opportunity to get hired at a global firm? The truth is, we're far away from creating equal play. So my primary reason for joining the Aga Khan Development Network was to see how we conduct talent hunts. So for instance, we're spending more and more time in the Northeast. We went to Meghalaya, now we're going to work with Arunachal Pradesh. We work within Telangana with the tribal welfare, social welfare, Eklavya model residential schools. Similarly, we're going to try and do this in Ladakh. The idea is when you can build a school where more than 50% children who are studying an IB, International Baccalaureate curriculum, the fees are crazy, okay? Now, in that environment, if more than 50% children are earning a scholarship to attend that school, imagine what that classroom looks like. So for me, language is taken out of the equation. So when we conduct any of our potential-driven scholarship assessment, we conduct it in the local language. So when we did this in Meghalaya, it was done in Khasi. When we do this in Bengal, it'll be Bangla. So similarly, when we did it in Telugu here, and a lot of the way to identify potential, we work with the work of a great professor called John Monroe, who sort of designed this for us, where to understand potential, you have to allow children the time for their minds to function in front of you. So a lot of things that you might do in IIMs is the group discussion. Similarly, you break it down for what a 6th grader might want to talk about. So there's a lot of work that goes into this. There's a lot of science, there's a lot of research, but I'm proud to say that, whenever we get invited to speak on global platforms, wherever in the world we go, everyone stands up in the end and claps when they see videos of kids coming from villages. We've just got 4 kids joining us from the ruralest parts of Adilabad forests, who have now joined the academy on a 1 crore scholarship each, right? So people are always clapping and humming about how wonderful this is, but no other schools are doing it. So how do you involve philanthropy in the conversation? So tech is one thing. I'm really glad that Nayak Saab spoke about the brick and mortars, because you can't do either or. It's a balance. You can't move completely to tech. So I think a lot of what we want to do continually is to create an environment which is truly representative of what this country is about. That representation in a classroom. You have the topmost industrialist child sitting next to a child whose father's a fruit seller, mother's a maid. That's the classroom you're building. And I'm so proud. And there are times people will come and say, we don't want our kids to go here. That's also the reality of India. So when you talk about skills, I think it's so important to understand the value system. And I think the gentleman from Princeton spoke about this. We have to have a mind shift to write, if you want to go abroad on full scholarship, that journey starts in junior school. It can't be when she's in 21 years old, suddenly she's a genius. So rural India is the future. So if more and more schools will invest in rural India, all these people sitting in the back will aspire to go to great universities and then come back to where they belong. That is the biggest shift that can happen here. And education plays the biggest role.
Absolutely. Rural India is the future. And I think phenomenal work there. I think this is the true definition of what a heterogeneous cohort could mean when it comes to demographics, that you can have inside the classroom. It'll be great if you can also maybe spend a few seconds talking about the impact that this program has had. Like we've talked about what you're trying to do, right? You're bringing up people from, various districts in different parts of the country, right? But where do they end up after this schooling is done?
Thanks, Rohit. And just to give you a quick example, so for instance, when we go and do this in villages across India, we identify states, we also work in conflict zones around the world. I have the great privilege of working with students from Syria, from Afghanistan, who live on campus. We've just welcomed these kids. And a lot of these kids can't even write a sentence in English properly up until when they enter grade 7. Because like I said, these assessments, conversations are in local languages. These children have gone on to Brown, Georgetown, Northwestern, Ashoka University on full funding. So when you talk about the impact of education, it comes to creating an equal level playing field and opportunity. Now for us, we have, at all points in time, we recruit 10 children every year, which is an annual budget of 10 crores for us. But like I said, if this sort of can spread across the board, you'll have more and more people doing this. And one final point, when we interview the kids, especially from India, in their final rounds, and you ask them, what do you want to do in life? You come into a great program, 90% of them will say IS officers. The others will say, I want to be a doctor or a lawyer. So, the beauty in this, they're thinking about how can they come back. So that's the beauty and the impact of working in an organization that allows you to constantly work with such incredible young minds.
Great. I would like to move to Damini next. You've talked about VMake Scholars and the way you have helped students get scholarships and, bring out the right information and transparent information that they need to progress further in their higher education. What do you think is the role of various stakeholders like the government, the NGOs, right, the private educational institutions or educational institutions in general to bring together a very robust skilling ecosystem for the rural economy, for the rural areas? What's your take on that?
See, the stakeholders, everyone has their role to play. Everyone can change the ecosystem overall to make it more skilled workforce, which I think Nayak ji probably will be the better person to talk about. See, these stakeholders at all levels, before that I would come to the student, someone who has to get skilled, rather than talking about the people who have to skill this student, right? So I believe the intent is a very important factor. The student should be intended enough to that, if the opportunities are there, if there is a center of skilling. I'll share one example with you that there are a lot of ITI centers which are, skilling centers run by government or let's say TASK in Telangana. So these people who are enrolling for those, centers, many of them are not even regular to those centers or to those training sessions. That just shows the intent of, the person, when you're getting an opportunity to go to a center and get yourself trained, you're not inclined to do that. And I believe that also comes from when we are talking about rural skilling here, that also comes from that people probably don't see role models around, or they see less of a role models around. I think yesterday at the TIE we were talking about that, there should be more entrepreneurs. And I think when more of those, probably the role models will come in front of them, they would want to see how to be there. But as of now, I feel that, people are not everyone, of course, there are people, there are stars, who come out from a group of, let's say, 50 people. There are people who want to do different, who want to, move forward in their life and get themselves trained, go to the upper, ladder or take the next step. But again, another example I'll share with you. So I come from a very small place, not a village though, but I grew up in Jammu, which again, the lack of awareness, and you see people with lack of intent also. You tell them that, we have to be graduate, people say, hey, you know what, because they've been seeing people doing work or using methods of earning which doesn't require education, so they don't see that much value in education also. I have seen people around me who didn't wanted to go beyond 10th standard or 12th standard because they just didn't see value in getting themselves more equipped or more educated. So another example comes from, when I was a kid. Probably in 5th, 6th class or something. So my father is a contractor, so government contractor for constructions. So he would always have this, construction workers and laborers coming from, different places like Jhansi and, other places in Madhya Pradesh and all, who are in Jammu doing the construction work. So they would have their kids whom they will not enroll in schools also, right? So what we would do is my mother would enroll them in a school nearby, saying that, I would pay the fees, but nothing to them, but to the school I would pay and let them, go to the school. And then sometimes I would start taking the tuition classes for them. I'll just bring these 2 kids, and I'm very excited to, teach them and handhold them, make them write ABC, whatever I could do, as a 5th or 6th class student. And then, these kids, they would just not turn up next day. I mean, I'll scold them. Sometimes I'll slap them that, why you're not studying and why are you not writing this? And then they would not turn up next day. So I'm like, if I am at that place and I have to, look up to someone and I want to move forward, I would do anything to, whether it's scoldings or whether it's anything I want to learn. So I think the intent of the student, especially in rural India or the part of the country where the awareness is lacking or the role models is lacking, I think it becomes difficult to motivate those people that it's important and this is something you should do and this is something you should enroll for, is one thing. So the main stakeholder, which is the person who is going to get skilled, has to have that inclination to get skilled. The second thing which I want to talk about is, of course, the educators, or when we asked the organizer that who is the audience, they said there are a lot of college principals also. So I don't know how many are there in the crowd, but then to you, I want to say that, so many times we are making a degree a way to just get a certificate rather than, making people equipped with skills. So to give you an example, let's say, right from my experience as an entrepreneur who recruits a lot from Hyderabad or the nearby towns like Nizamabad or Suryapet or, other places, I have seen, I see that 90% of the students, like we generally recruit fresh graduates like who completed like their BBA or BComs or, other degrees in Telangana. So many of them do not have any internship experience also. So when we ask them that, what were you doing after your second year break, or what were you doing after your first year break? Most of them would answer, oh, I was at my nani's place, or I was, spending time with some relatives, I was, doing something. People should have that, the colleges should probably tell students that, this is important, this is something you have to do. Again, the last semester of the, college, the 6th semester, there are a lot of colleges who allow students that, go out and do an internship and come back. But there are colleges who are like, no, attendance is mandatory. And we, end up talking to placement coordinators saying that, they have been doing this for, 5 semesters already. They are still not workforce ready. Let them work in a, in an office and see how exactly and, how should they be ready and what skills they should acquire. And when these people are in office for like 6 months, after that when, they are going back or, graduating, they have so much better revenues than their other, classmates. So if there are principals in the crowd, I want to tell them that, the attendance issue, please send your students outside of the classroom and let them gain, real level skills. Whether you are in Nizamabad in some degree college or whether you are in Hyderabad in some degree college, people have to go out to learn those real life skills.
Right.
That's, I think, another thing I want to talk about.
Great,
Yeah.
great. But I think, things are changing now. We've seen many colleges opening up for, allowing their students to go out and do internships. I work for Talent Sprint. We are in the process of building talent, right? Skilling young graduates for getting them a career break. And we've found enough of them willing to go out and do an internship 3 to 6 months long, in the final semesters. But I think you've touched a very important point that in this entire ecosystem, while there are multiple stakeholders, the most important one is the end beneficiary, the learner himself or herself. And whether it's a free or a paid program, the intent of the learner is really important, right? Only that decides how successful the program is going to be, right? So serious learners is what we're looking for, right, with the right intent. Great. I would like to now move to Shabri, right? You've talked about, you've shown some fantastic slides. You've talked about how we can do simulation and carry that in a bag that you're carrying here. So let's touch upon the role of technology, right? How can you leverage technology in making education and skilling more accessible, right? So what's your take on that?
Yeah. Two things I wanted to say. One is the technology is a tool to enable you to do things much better. And as long as it delivers what it promises to deliver, it is good. Otherwise, technology for the sake of it is not going to be useful. And when it comes to the scope of hard skills, one of the things that I would like to share is that there are two reasons why any person chooses a career. One is the money part and one is the social status part. The money part of hard skills is now becoming more clear. Like a welder can start at 15,000 rupees, but if he goes to weld on a nuclear power plant, he can make 4 lakh rupees a month. That career progression, not many people are aware of. And these are areas where technology can play a major role by eliminating the cost of delivering the training, and as well as giving you more data on what you did right, what you did wrong, measure in a very unbiased manner. Secondly, the social status. That's where I think we as a society will have to change a bit. Today, even though a plumber or a welder may make more money than, let's say, a software engineer, the social status doesn't come. Whether it is, are you being treated better by the people around you, or in India it becomes very important, in the marriage market, do you find preference? So all of these factors matter. So coming to technology, I think the global technological ecosystem has evolved in the last 5 years very much with this AR, VR, everything becoming more accessible, the prices of the devices coming down, and more developers building tools on that. So one thing, what you said is, it has to be a mix of brick and mortar. So the classroom could be a fixed hub, and you could have these moving around in spokes. And one challenge in any hard skill training center is that you find student mobilization a big challenge. You build the state-of-art training centers, but people don't come in. That's where you go around showing this, and then get the kids interested by showcasing that they have something high-tech to work on. And the first few times when we took these 2 real welders to get them upskilled, they were like, we are so thankful. Nobody ever thought of us before in any kind of technological intervention. We never got to touch any high-tech device. So there are a lot of things that tech can change. It can democratize. And I think we have quite a few interesting days ahead with tech becoming affordable and more focus coming to places like India, where there is a lot of opportunity. One thing that prompted me to start Skillvery is also that the T3 of Delhi Airport, as well as the Delhi Metro. The Delhi Metro was constructed by the tunnel boring operators from Peru, and T3 was built using Chinese labor. So in a country of 1.4 billion, and we have 70% of the population in the productive age group. Why should we bring people from outside? So there's a huge opportunity, and tech could be an enabler for that. Thank you.
I have a question for you, just if I may.
Yes, sure.
When you're talking about dignity of labor, yeah, because I think you also brought up the marriage market, how much who XY earn. we are not very skilled as people. So when IKEA came to India, we were one of the first countries that outsourced how to build IKEA furniture. Okay. So how does tech bridge the gap in terms of maybe if we can go to tier 2, tier 3 and further? At what age should these kind of skill sets start being discussed? Because the conversations that one has is, you're not proudly saying you're a welder or a plumber, but if you are an engineer or a lawyer or a teacher, it's great. So that value conversation comes in, but where does tech play a part in this, and at what age?
So let me bring a school STEM angle also to this. So we, as a side, we built some virtual reality app which teaches kids about gravity in high school, in 7th or 8th standard, by letting them play basketball on Earth, on Moon, and on Mars. So you can make kids play basketball in the real world without any tech, but you can't make them play basketball on the Moon or Mars. So this virtual reality technology is making them do some activity which is otherwise impossible to do or costly to do. I would say it should start somewhere in 5th or 6th standard, but different things will have different age groups to start with.
Yeah, and just to add a bit more to that, we at Talentsmith we did a pilot last year with middle school students, middle school girl students around Hyderabad. So we identified about 100 girl students who are in 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, right? And these students were coming from very, very deprived backgrounds, right? I mean, 70% of them hadn't touched a computer before this intervention happened to them. So what we really did over that 3-week summer boot camp with these 100 middle school girls is gave them a program called C-STEM, which is computational STEM, where the idea was to teach them concepts on physics and math, right? Simple concepts of math and physics using computational thinking, right? So we all know that visualization is a very important aspect of learning, right? You have to visualize things when you're learning to sort of cement that understanding. And how do you know if they are visualizing it the right way or not? So we've brought this platform where, let's say if you're talking about a simple balance beam, right? How do you know if I put a 2 kg weight on one side and 3 kg on the other side, how would it just go up and down? So we had the simulator, a virtual simulator where they could just play around with weights on both sides and see how the input changes the output. So I think technology at various levels, starting at very early school education, can definitely make a huge, huge impact there. Moving on to Nayak ji, we've talked about how we can impact the rural population and communities through various technological interventions and otherwise. You have been on the other side of the table, right? I mean, in addition to what you're doing now, you're very passionate about people and talent development, but you've spent a good 2 decades of your career at an IT company.
Hiring people.
Hiring people, training people, and getting them ready for the work. So what do you think is the gap from the lens of a recruiter, right? From the lens of somebody who's going to absorb this talent, be it rural or urban? Let's talk about that.
So if I talk of discussions within the HR teams, there's one line which is very common, which says hire for attitude.
Hire for attitude.
Yeah, so I think that's something which students, they need to be talked about this, which is they can't think of work by watching some movie and trying to dream of work is going to be like it's in a movie. And the second big thing, at least when we talk of hiring freshers, actually when I went to college to hire freshers, it didn't matter what the student studied in college, whether he did civil engineering or mechanical engineering or commerce or arts. Yeah, there are roles which are technical and non-technical roles. So if I had to hire for a technical role, I'd obviously hire a person who's trained for engineering. But then if I had to, then I would pick anybody from any branch. So the key thing is, because the job roles require them to be doing something which is not taught in college. So the absolute key thing, if I had to just put it in one line, would be, are they trainable for that role? So to me, what they studied in college, how they performed in college, is a good indicator of are they trainable or not. And when I look at their marks, it is only indicating to me that this person can learn. But yeah, unfortunately today marks are not a great indicator for that, which is why companies use a whole lot of other tools to see if the person has understood what he studied in college. Yeah, so people use marks less today, let me be honest. So companies don't look at marks much. They use other tools. They use AMCAT and so many tools to actually assess. But then finally, I think the key thing that companies would hire for is, are they trainable? Especially the organized sector ones, companies where they invest a good 2, 3, 4 months into training them. They run a very hard induction program for them. So the only key thing, which my message to all the students here is, they need to demonstrate that they can learn. And for that, their communication skill, their ability to use computers, these become the key aspects of demonstrating their learning ability.
Right. So learnability or learning to learn is a very important skill, the most important skill. And if you can hire for attitude, that sort of takes care of a large part of it. I think one, last point, if one of you can touch upon, at all levels, school education, higher education, with the kind of demographic that we have in our country and the large population denominator, how do we avoid this rat race at every level? Like, are we really imparting skills that are needed for making them get a good career, or are we just helping them get ready for a rat race at a future date?
So let me share some numbers here. Nationally, there are about 4.5 crore students enrolled for higher education. That's in colleges and universities. And this is just about 30% of the adult population of age 18 to about 25. So it's just 30%. So there's about 1 crore students who graduate from these BA, BCom, engineering, medicine, and all of that. And 65% of that are in rural. So when we talk of all this demographic dividend and all that, unless we can utilize the 65% well, we are going to lose out, and it's going to be a liability. So therefore, I think it's a big responsibility on the community, all of us, governments, NGOs, even corporates. Unfortunately, India, the industry and education relationship has not been great. The universities and industry don't collaborate too well. I think that's the key, and NGOs like us can step in and do part of it, but it's the size of the challenge is huge. But we should also look at it as an opportunity. Imagine 65% of a crore, which is 65 lakh students, graduate from rural parts of India every year. And if they can be leveraged well, we can actually change the scene of rural India.
Right. We are on top of the hour, but one last point from
Just to
Marsha.
add on, I think the rat race starts from pre-primary now. It's not university. I mean, you have children in wait lists across schools. So again, it comes down to privilege and who do you know to get in. I can speak from experience, but I'm just telling you that, the rat race is now far beyond watching Three Idiots and saying, what does it mean to go to IIT? Now it is across the board, and there's so much importance now more than ever for every stakeholder to take ownership. I think whether it's internships doesn't mean photocopying. Going to a corporate for any kind of work experience should then plan out whether that person wants a career in that job or not. Right? So everyone has to step up. Schools, universities, corporates, NGOs, government. If we can, then the 65% will be solved in the next 65 years. But it will.
Right.